This weekend I have a marquetry class up at the Woodcraft in Baltimore, and just like every marquetry class, I don't have any donkeys ready for my students. It's because in the previous class I probably gave them all away, or I've met people who wanted to try marquetry in the intervening time between classes and just given donkeys away. It's just a thing that I do. Anyway, I have to make 6 donkeys, and I've gone ahead and milled up the material to make 6 donkeys, and I'm going to dovetail these the way that I normally do, and I'm going to film the entire thing because I figure why not. It's not going to be scripted. I'm probably going to have a lot of breaks. You're probably going to see a lot of nonsense. My son is homesick today, so you know, just roll with it. But I will talk through how I cut dovetails, and you'll see me cut 6 of them. So if you want to learn how to cut dovetails, this video just might be for you. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started here. I have all my material milled up. There are 6 uprights and 6 tables for this thing. I'm building this based on a donkey that I have made and used repeatedly. It's just this thing right here. It's just a dovetail joint, really. 90 degrees, and then I cut a bird's mouth in there. There's really nothing much more to it. This one has sandpaper on the back and holes because I attach it to this cleat that I have and then a star knob. But the class I'm teaching, we're going to have vices for everybody. So I only need to make this upright in the bird's mouth, and that's what I'm going to do today. Now, on this, you will notice that the upright has the dovetails, and that is purposeful and that is important. There's going to be a lot of downward pressure on this part of the table. Trust me, I've taught a lot of these classes, and that mechanical lock from the dovetail really does help keep this table from coming apart. I've had this for a really long time, and I abuse the hell out of it, and this joint is not coming apart. So when I make this, I just want to make sure that I cut the tails on the upright. If I cut the tails on this part, I wouldn't have that mechanical lock. So think of it this way. This would be the table, and I'd be pushing down this way. The pressure here would want to pull those tails apart. It's just about thinking about how the geometry of the joint works. So given that, I'm going to go ahead and mark up these boards. Now, I've already made sure that these are perfectly square and flat and all that jazz. I did that off camera. So for these, my uprights, I need to mark the tails on just one end because this is just a single joint. And so I'm going to take my marking gauge. This is a marking gauge made by Mass Woodworks. I have customized it, obviously. It's quite nice. And I'm just going to set this, I've already set it, to the thickness of my pin board. And over on my tail board, with it hanging over the edge of my bench here, or my vise rather, I'm just going to go ahead and scribe a line on both sides. And since this is the tail board, I'm also going to scribe it on the edges. These I will make sure I do a little bit heavier. So I'm going to go ahead and do this on all 6 of these uprights right now, and I'll speed through that. Okay, now I have marked all of the tail boards, and I may as well mark my pin boards, which are these bad boys right here. So I'm going to go ahead and reset my marking gauge to be the depth of the tail board for marking the pin board. Now on the pin boards, I don't need to worry about marking the edges because there isn't, or there's that half pin on the edges rather. So material will stay there. So unless I want a gauge line for no reason, I don't have to do the edges there. So I'll just go ahead and do these, and then I am going to move on and get ready to cut the tails. I'll see you in a second. Okay, so here I have obviously put 4 of these tail boards up in my vise. I would love to put the other 2 in here, but I just don't have the room. First thing I'm going to do is mark the width of the half pin, which is going to be on both ends of each board. And I'm going to make that about 3/16. So what I'm doing here is just taking this marking gauge, or not marking gauge, dividers here, and just poking a hole 3/16 in from each end on the end grain of these boards right here. Probably poking a hole on the very edge too, but who cares? And doing that. And for the other two, I'll just do the same right here while I have them out. I don't know if you can see that. Sorry, I don't know if I covered that up. Don't have a monitor in front of me for this, unfortunately, so apologize if things are messed up. So now I know I'm coming in 3/16 here and 3/16 here on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all 6 boards. So I want about, I don't know, 3 dovetails here. This is about 3.5 wide. 3 dovetails feels like it'll work. So what I do is set my dividers open to what visually looks to be about 3, or 1/3 of the width of the board. I don't know why I just said 3. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm sticking it in that part right there, and I'm going to walk it, okay? Boop, 1, 2, 3. Okay, that wasn't enough, so I need to open it more, okay? So I'm going to walk it lightly. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that is also not enough. I landed right on that 3/16 mark right there. So I'm going to open it up just a bit more. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, still not okay. What I'm trying to do here is the distance between this 3/16 mark and the point of the divider on this end right here is going to be the distance between my tails when I mark them up. So I'm going to do it again. 1, 2, 3, and that's a pretty wide distance. It's about, well, 3/16, so it's about 3/8 in between the tails. And I'm okay with that because I don't really care how these look. Normally I like tight pins, but for this I don't really care. So I'm going to go ahead and make dark lines here, or dark marks rather. 1, 2, okay, and then come over here and go 1, 2. And now I can go ahead and mark that across, and you can see how that looks. So you can see there I have a dovetail here, a dovetail here, a dovetail here, and the space here and the space here is equal, and my half pin spacing is equal. So with my dividers set like that, I can go ahead and do this on all 6 boards, which is what I'm going to go ahead and do right now, and I'll do it all sped up. So I hope this is a good angle for showing this, of course. So I hope this is a good angle for showing this. It's a little hard to get that all set up. I have everything marked out here. I normally don't mark the slope of my tails, mainly because I just have them kind of down by muscle memory. I don't really also care about the slope of my tails. The slope of your tails doesn't matter at all, because eventually I'll be matching each of these boards to its mate, and that will take care of any error in like the theoretical angle that I'm trying to hit. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and just cut these. It's important that I stay 90 across the end grain as I cut, and that angle doesn't matter, but you'll probably see me get mostly the same angle out of all this, and we'll check it at the end, I suppose. So I have a gent saw here, and what I'm going to do is I just have this lightly scoring that grain across the top, and you can see I have a finger there to just stabilize things. Now, I don't know if you can see it in this angle, probably not, but I'm going across that pencil mark that I made earlier. So really, my finger right here is guiding my saw, okay? I'm just going back and forth very lightly, okay? Not really at all. You can hear it, right? And now I'm actually going to start and cut this tail. I know about that is the correct angle to cut. It's a little hard to see here. And I'm just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth here until I get right down to my gauge line. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and cut all of these the same way first. Sorry, I need to change the lighting a bit. It's a little hard to see. Okay? We got this one going. And as I'm doing this, I'm letting the saw guide my cut mostly, okay? I'm not pressing down. A lot of people, when they get one of these saws, oops, I almost cut that tail in the wrong direction. A lot of people, when they get a saw in their hands for the first time, they think they have to bear down on it to get it to cut. These things are designed to cut with just the weight of that back, the spine right here, being enough to guide that saw through, okay? And as you can see, I'm not really concerned about my dovetail angles. I can see that first one is a little different than the others, or it at least appears to be, but it does not matter. Again, all these are going to get transferred later, so who cares? And you can see how quickly I go ahead and do this. I'm in the rhythm now. This is why I like to have them all set up like this. That's a pretty shallow dovetail, but that's fine. I could fix that if I wanted to, but there's no need. Let's fix it. So what I'm going to do here is just try to go in that curve. And make that dovetail a little steeper. And this is some goofball stuff right there, but there, I mainly fixed it. Now, I wouldn't want to do that in a very brittle wood like oak or something like that, because that could give me trouble later. But given that this is eastern white pine, I have a lot of room for error, frankly, in these dovetails. Pine will kind of mush together for you. The thing you have to be careful about when cutting dovetails in pine is that unless your chisels are super sharp, they will want to cave that grain in instead of cut it. Okay, now I've gone and cut all my tails going this way. I'm going to go back and cut them all going this way now. And it's pretty much the same. When I first started cutting dovetails, I would flip the boards to get the muscle memory down. And I would not, so I would cut all in this direction, and then I would turn them all around so I could go back and cut them all in the same direction. And that let me get that angle down and was kind of like the feel for cutting dovetails. So you can do that if you'd like. This is just quicker because I don't have to pull things out, and you can see as I cut these tails that they're going to look just fine. Really, it's just staying 90 across the end grain that's the most important thing. And because I made those pencil marks, you kind of can't mess it up. And sometimes I don't even make the pencil marks because, again, the muscle memory kind of gets you there. Oh, skip on my saw. No big deal. These dovetails are definitely turning out to be a little irregular. Not the perfect angle, but again, I don't care because I'm more about the mechanical. I more care about the mechanical lock of the dovetail than I do about its aesthetics, right? These are donkeys that I'm going to give to my students to take home. I just don't want them to break. And this is the quickest joint I know how to cut. Well, that's not true. But this is the quickest and strongest joint I can cut. Okay, these look like they're just about done. Oh, jeebus. My wrist is getting kind of tired just from sawing back and forth, but this is how you cut dovetails. This is how you get it done. You just knock them up, get them down. So now I have a fret saw. This is blue spruce, doesn't really matter. This one, the blade, the teeth are oriented going that way, so I can slip this sucker in and cut my waist out. Don't cut the tail out, Albert. So theoretically, this thing could slip all the way in, and I could come down here and just cut that waist out. Now, this blade is not the ideal blade for this saw right now, and so it's not fully fitting into that kerf that I just cut with my back saw, and this thing is also not tensioned properly, it seems. So I'm gonna have to tension it a bit, and we're back. There we go, much better. And as you can see, I'm being like really rough with this because it doesn't really matter. This is all going to get taken care of with a chisel to clean things up later. And I'm just knocking. As I'm doing this, I'm trying to make sure I keep this parallel so I'm not cutting into a section that I want to keep on the back. Sometimes I'll actually check, but you know, again, this is just donkeys for students. So, okay. So I got the waist out between the tails. So now I have to get the waist off, or that half pin waist off at the ends. I knew that was going to happen. I knew that was going to happen. I did so that that would happen. Okay. So there's one on the floor right here that I meant to have it do that. I'm going to put this right in here, and I'm only going to do this for one board, and then I'm going to cut the tails on those and fast forward to the chisel work. But right now I want to show you how I get rid of this half pin waist right here. So what I'll do first is take a chisel. Usually I'll take one that's wider than the width of the board, but I don't have one on hand and I don't feel like going over there. But what I'm doing here is I am doing just a slight paring cut in that waist section towards that gauge line on the edge there. And remember when I said I make the gauge lines really heavy on the edges? This is why. It's so that I can easily pop that waist out. And if you can take a look there, it might be hard to see, but there's now a little ledge right there, or a gullet that I can set my saw teeth against right there. And now I know I'm cutting in the correct location, and I just have to make sure that I keep my saw moving straight up and down. And once it hits where I cut before, that half pin waist will pop out. Now I can flip this over and do the same for the other side. Make sure this is on a good spot for the camera. And again, you don't have to make it too deep, but I like to go fairly deep just because if you pull out more material, then the saw will stick onto that wall a little bit better. I just repositioned this to make sure it's roughly 90 degrees in my vise. Again, here I'm making sure that the right side of my saw teeth are just touching that little wall that I just made there. And I'll go back and forth very, very gently, and I'm just nibbling away. And I have that line right here that'll help guide me and make sure I stay 90 degrees. And it's really not all that hard to get a fairly clean cut right off the saw. There's really no waste that I have to deal with. So now what I'm going to do is cut the tails on the other two boards and basically get everything to where it's right here, and then I'll grab a chisel and show you how I remove the waste in between the tails. Okay, I'm over here at the other end of my bench, and I have all my tail boards ready to go for the waste removal in between the tails. You can see there. And what I'm doing now is I have a chisel. This one is the widest one that I can use to get in there. I can probably get away with a wider one for some of these, but this is pretty much it. So what I'm going to start to do now is I'm going to take this, and since I cut so close to my marking gauge line, you can see right there I actually cut right to my marking gauge line, I can actually just go ahead and whack this right at that marking gauge line. So I'm going to put this, you can see it's right in there and it's locked in. And that's because I made that a heavy gauge line, just because I don't care about it staying on the finished product here. So now what I'm doing here is I'm going to take my chisel, and that's about 90 degrees. Okay, but I'm going to go in and make it a little bit off 90, okay? And the reason why is because I'm only going to take this and go down to about the middle, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and do it across the entire baseline here. Okay, so if you take a look there, you can see I stopped halfway and I angled in a bit. And the reason why is because that portion of the dovetail does not matter for the structural integrity of the joint. The glue there is going to do nothing. So all we need is to make sure that, excuse me, all the material is out of the way there. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same on this one. Start right in that gauge line and knock that sucker down about halfway, and go into the other section. Sorry, it's a little hard to see with the camera set up here, but I want y'all to see this. So I'm halfway through, and the reason why I only go halfway through is because if I went all the way through, first off, I'd have to make sure I was staying 90. I wouldn't be able to increase this angle here, right, because it would come out on the other side. The other thing is, if I go all the way through, even if I did stay perfectly 90, I'm going to blow out this back end. That grain is just going to break. So that's why we only go halfway through. It doesn't have to be perfectly halfway, but, you know, just get a feel for it. And then here on the other side, I'm doing the exact same thing, and I'm a little bit more careful here because it's easy to let that thing get away from you and accidentally slip your chisel into a section that you want to keep on the other side. So let's just go ahead and do that. And let's take a look here. Now, you can see there's some nonsense in there, but comes out fairly easily. Sorry, I'm trying to juggle the camera and looking at my work at the same time, and it's not too fun. Now, at this point, you can see here that there's a little schmutz like here and here, and what I'll do is take my chisel, and I can use this as like a paring surface. So if I use that like that, I can snap off those sections there that I just didn't get when I was chopping down. This is super dangerous how I'm doing this right now with my hand in the way of the chisel. That's much better. You never want your hand in the direction of a sharp chisel. Don't ask me how I know that. This is fine because everything's so far away, but I have done some real stupid stuff in the past. Okay, this one is pretty much good to go. I'm going to go ahead and do it for these other ones, and I guess we'll do it fairly quickly on camera. I'm probably going to bump the camera a couple times, but that's okay. Maybe I'll, you know what, let's do this next one, actually. Let me find, here we go. Here's a good one to show. So you see, there's a lot of waste in this one, okay? So the last thing I want to do is take my chisel and start chopping at the baseline right away, because what will end up happening is there's too much material on this side of the bevel, so that chisel will like kind of bounce back and your baseline will get offset a bit. Now also notice when I'm doing this, I'm making sure that the bevel of my chisel is always pointed that way, okay? The flat part of my chisel is just gonna sit in the baseline, okay? I never want it this way. If I do it this way, it's gonna widen and make that baseline go further down, okay? If you have that happening on your dovetails, that's why that's happening. Always like this, okay? Now, what I'm going to do here is stay far away from the baseline, and I don't worry about chopping all the way down through to the bottom here, because even if I blow out at this point, it's going to be still in the waist. Okay, I'm getting closer to the baseline. Now, this is pine, so there is a bit of mushiness to it, so I can still get away with being fairly far away. Now, I'm still fairly far away for like a material like oak or something like that, but this is pine. It's not gonna move too much, so I am cutting right to my baseline now on this side. There's that big chunk of waste, and you can see it comes off really easily on this side just because there really is nothing supporting it at the back because I already took care of it on that side. So chopping to the baseline again, here, halfway down, halfway down, halfway down, and you can see I'm pulling back, and there still is some waste in there, and that's fine. Sometimes if it's still attached, you'll have to like push it out with a little force, but no, I did meet it there, and here, let's get that out. Yep, we're all good. There's still a little, yep, and I'll clean that up just like I did the other one. I'm just gonna cut, or rather chop these other 4 off camera because there's nothing really much more. Off camera, I finished chopping the waste between the tails on the tailboards. So now it is time for me to transfer the location of the tails to the corresponding pin board. So what I've done is marked each pin and tail board to correspond to each other because, like I said earlier, each of these is going to be fit specifically to its mating piece. So we want to make sure that everything's marked up now. Now what I have here is a dovetail alignment jig. This is one that was made by my friend Matt for me. It's just a 90-degree joint right here. He did dovetails. This was a practice joint for him. And on this side, it has a fence. And what I'm going to do here is put my pin board in right here and clamp it in my vise so that it is against this fence here, and this part is flush with this surface. And then what I'm going to do is take my tailboard and slide it up there, pushing against this fence and bringing it up right here. Now you can see here maybe that my tails extend just a bit beyond, and that's on purpose. That's because I set my marking gauge like that. So now what I'm going to do is put firm pressure down on here, and I have my marking knife here. What I'm going to do is make sure it's firmly pressed against the walls of the tails here. I want to make sure that my knife is nice and square. And what I'm doing is just transferring the location of that tail right onto the end grain of that pin board. And I like to make this line nice and deep to make sure that I see it. I have in the past used blue tape, which is a method that is really great for sighting those marks if you're a beginner. And I'll still use it once in a while if I'm feeling the need, because it is quite helpful. But right here, I'm just marking right on the end grain, making sure it's nice and deep. And then afterwards, they may be a little bit hard to see right there, but those lines are right there, and I'll just darken them with a pencil a bit just to make sure you can really see them. And now I know where the tails are located, and on those X's is the material I need to remove. So I'm going to go ahead and do this for all the other 5 pin and tail boards right now. Okay, with all those transferred, now I have just drawn some 90-degree marks with pencil down here, and that's just going to visually guide my cut. So now when it comes time to cut the pins, or the pin board rather, I want to make sure that my saw is staying in the waist on the sides of the lines, meaning you see this X here, I don't want to put my saw on this side of that line, I want it to be on this side of that line. And I am quite daring, so I'm going to go right up against my line here. And I want you to take a look here and see that it's not my saw that's going into that knife line right there. It's the very right set of my saw teeth that is just touching that line. If I put my saw right in that knife line, I'm going to have a big, huge gap because the set of the saw is going to open it up more than I need it to. So I'm going to do this, and you can see I'm just barely going to leave a little bit of pencil there. I'm going back and forth, and as I'm doing this, I'm just watching that line on the face of the board to make sure that I'm staying 90 degrees, because that's really the most important part here, or one of the most important parts. So you can see there that there is a bit of pencil left there, a tiny bit, but I mostly got rid of it. Now I'm going to go to this next one. This is going to be a little bit harder for you to see because the knife line is on the other side of the saw from where the camera is. I got this one going. Just fine. These are some quite long tails because of the difference in the thickness. Okay, here again you can see how close I'm getting to my line there. And there we go. And the reason why I'm getting so close to my line here is because I don't want to spend a lot of time fitting this joint later. The further I stay away from my line, the more I'm going to have to pare away with a chisel. Now, if I get way too close to my line and overcut, then, I'm going to have a gap. So if you're just starting out and cutting dovetails, I would say maybe don't be as daring as this, because you'll want to get a feel for what you can get away with and, what the right thing to do and what the wrong thing to do are. Okay, so there we go. I like that. And bam. And I'm cutting pretty square this whole time, you can see. A little off on that cut, but nothing that I need to worry about. And this is my final cut on here. Let's just make sure it's a little hard to see. There we go. A little off on the angle. Ooh, sorry. Whew. Okay. Now, I'm just going to remove that waste with my fret saw. And this is going to go a lot quicker than the tailboards did, just because this is a much thinner board. Oh, that's too deep. Don't want to cut past my baseline. It doesn't really. The aesthetics of this don't matter too much, but I don't want it to be ugly. Okay, and that is cutting a pin board. And what I want to take a look at now, before I move on to the next one, is let's just see how good this fits off the saw. Now, I have to cut a whole bunch of these, so I'm not entirely sure if this is going to fit off the saw, but it's getting in there. I'll have to pare a bit, You see that? It's seating just fine. If I try to whack this home though, what's going to happen is this board is probably going to split. The reason why is first off, it's too tight, and on this cut here, I'm a little bit off square, so I want to correct that before I drive this home. But first, I need to chop to the baseline before I start fitting this joint. But this is pretty good for a start. You really want it to be at the very least, seating off the saw. I could probably muscle that in if I wanted to, just because this is pine and it will crush, but I'm going to pare. But first, what I'm going to do is cut all of the other pin boards. I'm going to do that off camera because it's pretty much the same exact thing, and then we'll get to chopping to the baseline for all these pin boards, and then we'll fit the joints. Okay, it is clearly a new day, and I am ready to chop to the baseline on all of my pin boards. I've actually done it for 3 already, and I only have 3 left to go. Just want to show you this again because there were a couple things I wanted to bring up. I am just going to go right to my baseline on pretty much all these because I don't have that much material to remove. So right there, I'm just going to whack right down. And again, remember, I'm keeping my chisel a little off 90 degrees, and I'm only going halfway down through this pin board because I don't want to blow out the back end. This one I probably take a little bit of material off first. Why not? Then just, as I'm doing the baseline, I like to put my chisel in there, and then I'll kind of wiggle it back and forth, kind of try to twist it. And if I can't twist it, then that means it's fully in that baseline across the width of the chisel. It's a good way of making sure that you don't end up with like any nastiness. So on the back here, there's a little bit more material, so I'll whack once there. And again, I'm tilting my chisel a little off 90 just to meet in the middle on the other side. Now, the other thing that does, if you go a little off 90, it not only ensures that you'll meet in the middle, but it also makes sure that there's no hump in the middle. Sometimes if you're doing this, right, and you go off 90 in the other direction, right, and you go like this, then you can meet at both sides, but in the middle there will be a hump. And so your joint won't fully seat. So you want to make sure you're not doing that too. And if you make sure that's not happening at this stage, then it'll become a lot easier to fit this joint because you won't be messing around there. Okay, so now I've gotten all the waste out to the baseline on both sides. I still have some, excuse me, some schmutz in here. So I like to go in with the chisel, and you can see here I'm pushing it up against this pin wall and just kind of getting in there and breaking out that material there, okay? Kind of using my chisel as like a pry bar. And it does work. And it does get all that material out. So that's pretty much cleaned up. I'm going to go ahead and take care of these other 2, and then we'll go ahead and fit all of these joints. Okay, so now I am ready to start actually fitting this joint. And I showed you this one before when I cut it, or the pins rather, that this was starting to seat, but I did not want to push it all the way through because I was afraid that if I did, it would crack this joint. Now, what that means is that I have to remove material from these pin walls. I could remove material from the walls of the tails, but that's a lot harder. So you can do this 2 ways. People like to generally pare down to remove the material. I actually like to pare cross grain, and that requires a very sharp chisel, particularly if you're working with something like pine. But I'll show you that it works just fine. So the other thing that you need to know is where to pare, right? Because this joint, as I push it in, I can tell it's not tight across every single portion, right? So this tail might be tighter than this tail. So we don't want to pair equally across these tails. We want to figure out where it actually is too tight. That can be figured out a couple ways. You can look for burnishing on the walls of the pins where the tails were rubbing a little hard on there. You can kind of get a feel for it. Like, I'll generally know where things are too tight now. But the easiest way, if you're just starting out, is to take a pencil and just rub it on the walls of the tails. And I'll rub a lot of graphite onto the walls of the tails here on both sides. Sorry, this is going to take a second. I'm just using a standard number 2 pencil. And I will push it in here. I'll kind of wiggle it in. And you can see I'm already starting to crack a little bit there, okay? And that's fine, it's not a big deal. But I don't want to go any further. And you can see there's pencil lead now that's rubbed on those walls, okay? So now I know where I need to pair. So I know for sure I definitely need to pair a lot here because that gap opened up. So I'm going to pair across the grain, as you can see, and I'm also going to make sure I do it across the entire length of that pin wall, okay? Because if I don't, then I'm going to be creating kind of a wedge. And sometimes I'll start at the top and then pair down because I've created a new reference surface up at the top. This is a little hard for me to do with the camera here, just because it's in the way. A little hard. I'm removing quite a bit of material here because I know it's very tight there. I also know that this pin is a little off square, so I'm going to take care of that right now. That was that one, I mentioned that when I cut that pin. I was like, this one's a little off square, I think. So that pretty much took care of it. Things are a little less tight here. Sorry if I just bumped the camera right there. It's a little hard to get in here. Okay. And then over here, again, I'm doing this real goofy-like because I want y'all to be able to see. There's really nothing much to this, but it's just about pairing those walls and doing it in small bites so that you don't really have a ton of blowout. And again, making sure you get the entire length of the pin wall. Pushing that in, you can see I'm getting in a little bit further, but I have more material to remove. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and keep doing that until the joint fully seats and everything's fine. So I'm going to go ahead, do that right now. I'm going to move the camera just so I can get a little bit of a better angle on the chisels. And that's pretty much how I cut all of my dovetails. If it's a piece of furniture, I'll probably spend a little bit more time thinking about the spacing and making sure that the angles are consistent. But for a project like this, where all I really care about is the integrity of that joint and making sure that all the gaps close up so that it looks pretty, the way in which I did it right now and the speed and care with which I approached it is totally fine. If you're interested in learning more about cutting dovetails and the way that I do it, I go over my entire process that you just saw here in photos and with words in my book, Complete Starter Guide to Making Wooden Boxes, which is available from Fox Chapel Publishing. I think it's a great resource if you're looking to learn how to cut dovetails and apply them to certain projects. There's a bunch of step-by-step projects in there as well. Another thing I really think you should do if you're learning how to cut dovetails is go out there and see how everybody cuts them. Everybody is going to have slightly different methods, And you might find that you want to take some tips from one person and some other tips from another person and amalgamate them into your own method. That's all mine is, so I encourage you to do the same. In the meantime, if you have any questions or you're struggling with anything, you can always reach out to me. I am always down to talk dovetails. Thanks so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this.